Hello, friends. Summer is the season of light and sun and fluffy clouds, and I feel like our reading schedule should be the same. It should be full of feel-good fiction, small town charm, that cozy feeling of a lot of the reads that we typically read in the fall and winter can be read in the summer. We need to bring Hygge to summer, not just winter and fall. Today, I'm going to talk about 5 cozy reads that I absolutely loved. I came up with a scale of how to rate the cozy reads. So on the one end, I have leave. Then sort of towards the middle, I have lend. And then towards the other end, I have love. So leave, obviously, is a do not finish. I could leave it. Lend is it was good, but if I had bought the book, I would probably lend it to a friend to share. But on the other end of the spectrum is love, where I just loved the book and I would not get rid of it because I would probably read it again. It's The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. So there were a lot of interesting characters, like a talking succulent, a talking spider plant, who was the assistant to the main character, Keela, who was a librarian. And she lived in the city. She was a librarian at this big library, and they were at war, and the city was burning down. So she takes refuge at an island that she actually grew up on. As far as a first impression goes, I mean, what can you not like about a librarian with a talking spider plant that is her assistant? And she's saving books from this war. So some of the common thoughts and tropes are: everybody deserves a second chance. It's fairy tale-ish. There's a found family trope. She's an orphan. And a lot of the other characters are orphans as well. But they've all come together on this island and they all work together. So another trope is taking care of each other. And the best trope in this is that books are magic. Because they are. As far as final thoughts go on this book, when she was trying to escape the city, when she was sailing around on this boat, it just all of a sudden occurred to her to go back to where she grew up. I thought that was kind of weird, because I'm like, if I'm trying to escape somewhere and the city's on fire and I need to find somewhere to go to save these books, I'm going to be thinking of all kinds of plans. Maybe that's just me. I am a planner, but I would have thought before, like, oh, I could go back to Caltree because that's where I grew up. But anyways, so I really like this book. It is a great cozy summer read. I would put this in between lend and love because it was really good, but I would lend it to a friend. I wouldn't necessarily have to have this because I don't know that I would read it again. One of my other picks for the cozy summer reads is The Penderwicks. I absolutely adore this book. The author is Jean Birdsall, and on my sliding scale of leave, lend, and love, this is a love. I read this to my son when he was small. There's 5 books in the set, and this is the first one. There are 4 sisters. It's really reminiscent of a modern day Little Women. So there is Rosalind, Skye, Jane, and Batty. Batty's the youngest. She's 4 years old in this book. Rosalind's the oldest, and she's the most responsible. She takes care of everyone, and she's there for everyone for advice. Skye and Jane are really close in age, and Skye likes math, and she's more of a tomboy. Then there's Jane, who likes to write stories, and she's always writing Sabrina Starr stories. I absolutely adore this book. Then Mr. Penderwick, who is a botany professor, he is widowed. His wife died of cancer 2 weeks after Batty was born. They end up spending the summer, which they don't normally do, but they ended up spending the summer at a cottage on the estate of Arundel, which is this rich lady with a son who ends up becoming friends with them. The first impression of this is that it is very nostalgic. It brings back memories of books I would have read in the 70s on a picnic blanket under a tree with some Kool-Aid. So I would just like to read the first beginning so you can kind of get an idea of how wonderful this book is. Chapter 1, The Boy at the Window. For a long time after that summer, the 4 Penderwick sisters still talked of Arundel. Fate drove us there, Jane would say. No, it was the greedy landlord who sold our vacation house on Cape Cod, someone else would say, probably Skye. Who knew which was right? But it was true that the beach house they usually rented had been sold at the last minute, and the Penderwicks were suddenly without summer plans. Mr. Penderwick called everywhere, but Cape Cod was booked solid, and his daughters were starting to think they would be spending their whole vacation at home in Cameron, Massachusetts. Not that they didn't love Cameron, but what is summer without a trip somewhere special? Then, out of the blue, Mr. Penderwick heard through a friend of a friend about a cottage in the Berkshire Mountains. It had plenty of bedrooms and a big fenced-in pen for a dog, perfect for big, black, clumsy, lovable hound Penderwick, and it was available to be rented for 3 weeks in August. Mr. Penderwick snatched it up, sight unseen. He didn't know what he was getting us into, Betty would say. Rosalind always said, "It's too bad Mommy never saw Arundel. She would have loved the gardens." And Jane would say, "There are so many better gardens in heaven, and Mommy will never have to bump into Mrs. Tifton," that's Jeffrey's mother, "in heaven." Skye added to make her sisters laugh, and laugh they would, and the talk would move on to other things. But until the next time someone remembered Arundel. But all that is in the future. When our story begins, Batty is still only 4 years old. Rosalind is 12, Skye 11, and Jane 10. They're in their car with Mr. Penderwick and Hound. The family is on the way to Arundel, and unfortunately, they're lost. Which reminds me of another thing that I really liked about this. They are lost, and they are using a paper map because they haven't introduced cell phones into these books. They were written in, I think, 2005. So it was before that was a big thing. So I don't know. They seemed so reminiscent of a book I would have read as a little girl. Again, I highly recommend this, and I put it on my love at the end of the scale. Next cozy book I did have a copy of, but I lent it to a friend. And as you might guess, so on my sliding scale, that was in between lend and love. I probably wouldn't read it again, but it was good, and I do recommend it for a summer read. It takes place in the summer around the solstice. It's called Bittersweet in the Hollow by Kate Pearsall. Again, looking at my notes. I bought that book actually at the book fair that I went to last fall. The author was there. I did not get to hear her speak, and I almost didn't buy that book. As far as the first impression goes for that book, I almost didn't buy it because of the cover. It looked very kind of gothic-y with "That Is Not Me." But I read the back, the summary, and I was like, that sounds actually pretty good. And I'm really glad I picked it up. The story takes place near a national forest. They're like right on the border. Lyndon is the main character in this story, and her superpower from the James family is that she can taste other people's emotions. Then there's Sorrel, and that's Lyndon's older sister, I believe, and she can charm bees, and she can use the honey that's charmed to bind spells and make them stronger. And then there's Rowan, who can tell when people are lying, and she can persuade them to believe her and do what she wants them to do. And then there's Juniper, who I think personally has the scariest gift or superpower of them all, and that is she's a bridge between the living and the dead. And in the second book, it's very taxing on her. These girls are all around high school age. I think the oldest girl might be in college. So it's like this legend that like all the seniors go out and try and call the winged Mothman. Well, they did that, and then something happened, and the book is all about that. So for the coziness aspect, I think it is sort of a Louise Penny-ish cozy, not a Penderwick's cozy. The things I loved about this book were the power of women. There are women all through this book, and they are getting down to business. I also loved the cozy setting of the town. I'm a big setting person, and I just really loved the diner setting, the James household setting. Things I liked but wasn't super crazy about were the lore and legend. It was good, but that's not necessarily my kind of thing, and it went into it a little bit deeper than I would have liked, maybe, but it does explain the story and the backstory. So again, on my sliding scale, I put this in between lend and love because I did lend it to a friend. It is good enough to recommend, but not good enough to keep because I don't think I would read it again. Another book on my cozy read list for summer is The Cerulean Sea. It's written by T.J. Klune, and he actually has another one out that I have not read yet. There's Linus, who is the caseworker and is going to investigate this orphanage who is run by Arthur. And all the characters of the kids that are in this orphanage are so cool. It sort of reminds me of Harry Potter-ish. It's fantasy. So just an example of the characters, Fee is a forest sprite who is afraid of strangers. I thought that was cute. And Sal is a shifter, and he's shy because he's been in previous homes where he's been abused. If you think I'm looking at notes, I am. They're right here because I couldn't remember everything I wanted to say about this book. It's so good. But so I guess you've guessed that my sliding scale on this is at love. I absolutely love this book. I will definitely read this again before I get the second one out. I don't know if any of you use this app, and I did the free version. You do not have to pay anything for that. But you can screenshot quotes from the book and put them in here, which I think is really nice. One of the quotes or themes that I really liked about this book was, it says, home is where you feel like yourself. Home is where we get to be who we are. It's not fair. No, it's not fair. Life really is. But we deal with it the best we can, and we allow ourselves to hope for the best. Because a life without hope isn't a life lived at all. Change often starts with the smallest of whispers, like-minded people building it up to a roar. Fear is a powerful force, but love is even stronger. Sometimes the most important lesson in life is learning to see the beauty in the ordinary. Isn't that true? It's better to be kind than right. We fear what we do not understand, and we hate what we fear. Oh, this book I so recommend. If you only read one of these cozy reads, read this one. And the last cozy book is The Book Charmer by Karen Hawkins. It all centers around the Dove family in a town called Dove Pond. The Dove family is very magical. There are, again, a lot of women who have magical powers. So Sarah Dove is one of the main characters in this book, and she is a librarian. And she has magical powers on kind of like a bibliotherapist, where she knows what book to recommend to someone. They're going to need it. The other character is Grace Wheeler. She's just moved to Dove Pond. Her foster mother is dying. She has dementia, and she's also taking care of her niece. Her sister, I think, has passed away. She was a bit of a mess, and she's having a hard time relating to both the foster mother and the niece. The niece is like a teenager, and her foster mother, who she's loved and who took care of her whole life, now has dementia, and it's hard to relate to her. So upon the advice of the doctor, who said, go back to something familiar that the foster mother knows, and she grew up in Dove Pond, so that's how she ends up there. So if, like, Sarah Dove recommended a book to you and kept slipping a book in your bag and you lived in Dove Pond, I would definitely read it. She continually slips Little Women into Grace's bag, and I feel like she did that because Grace is a high power, like type A personality, financial analyst, makes tons of money, and here she is moving to this podunk town in the middle of nowhere. And I think Grace has to find out, as we find out in Little Women, that the most important things in life, close friends, family, a simple life, and a full life, and enjoying that life. On my sliding scale for this book, I put this in between lend and love. I did not buy myself a copy. I don't think I'll read it again, but it was very good, and I do highly recommend it. This is a great beach read.